grab your grannies because they're all going to come and live with you. Proposed law changes which would remove the need for building consents on homes under 60 square metres in certain areas are being met with enthusiasm from housing providers and also the opposition. What? The coalition government announced a new policy late yesterday. It was pitched as a way to make it easier to build what's typically called the granny flat and increase the supply of affordable homes. It follows a commitment by the National New Zealand First Coalition Agreement, which required the government to amend the Building Act and the Resource Consent System to make it easier to build these smaller structures up to 60 square metres that will be exempt from a building consent requiring only an engineer's report. However, the discussion document released as part of the announcement revealed the requirement for an engineer's report was being abandoned, as it could mean additional costs in engineering services. So it's still a little murky, I think. But look, Labor's back in the proposal. Housing spokesperson Kieran McAnulty says he was worried, although he's backing it, he's worried granny flats might end up being jammed into backyards too close to the main building with not enough room for stormwater to escape. He referred to Auckland that has been impacted by severe weather in the past with flooding in urban areas, which we have had. AUT Professor of Construction is John Tookey. He said the changes would save a few $1,000s in the building process and would generally be a positive move for housing supply. And he joins me now. Professor John Tookey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
John, good idea or not?
I think on balance, yeah, probably a good idea. It certainly gives the opportunity to be able to create some additional housing supply in the more affordable bracket. Is it going to be free-for-all? I don't necessarily think it'll be a free-for-all. I think it's going to be delimited by the amount of money available at the moment with high interest rates. But, yeah, on balance, yeah, good idea.
Do you share the view with MP McAnulty about the potential of not allowing stormwater to escape?
Yeah, the stormwater thing is a big deal. A 60 square metre house equates to about a 75 square metre roof, which means that every 10 mil of rain, you end up with 750 kilos of water. Well, if you get a 1 or 2 inch rainstorm, which can occur here in New Zealand very, very regularly, as you know, in Auckland, it's you can most certainly end up with 3 or 4 tons of additional stormwater runoff instead of it soaking away into the ground, ends up in the local reticulation system, and this can cause all sorts of localized flooding problems potentially. Should we be having stormwater detention tanks as part of these new builds? My contention is, yeah, probably, as a means of ameliorating the risk, but it's certainly it's something which needs to be considered, and a free-for-all is not a good idea for anybody ever.
John, talk to me about these stormwater tanks that you're talking about. Are they catch the water, I gather?
Yeah, so basically what you do is you have an additional tank on site that channels the water from the roof into it, and it stores the water for slow release. You can subsequently use it for watering the plants. You can use it for flushing the toilets. You can reduce the total amount of water supply that's necessary. Because remember, you're adding additional people into the local community, and consequently, you're going to actually have to supply those individuals with water from the mains. Okay, so maybe, just maybe, it would be a good idea to take a little bit of the additional load off. The big issue here is one of infrastructure generally. You've got additional traffic in urban settings. You've got additional poo going down pipes. You've got literally physically got more urine and feces that are going to have to be managed. You've got additional stormwater runoff. You've got additional requirements on things like doctors' surgeries, hospitals, local schools, and on and on and on and on. So unfettered development is not necessarily an opportunity as an opportunity to make money and all the good stuff that tends to go with it. It has huge connotations, huge unanticipated consequences associated with local communities, and it needs to be considered, I would contend.
Well, John, Doug's just texted in saying, what about the sewage as well, and no permit, it needs more work, which you've just touched on. Exactly right. More pipes, more sewage, more poo.
It's an ongoing issue. I mean, again, best will in the world. This is what happens. You know, we in Auckland, for instance, are from an infrastructural perspective are better provisioned than much of the rest of the country. However, you know, people forget. In 1969, we were still removing night soil, as in physically having the gong man going around to people's homes to take stuff away. It only stopped in Christchurch in 1984. You know, it took us 100 years between when the legislation came through at the tail end of the 1800s to the beginning of the 1990s, to where we were actually providing people in our urban centres with the necessary waste processing facilities to be able to have centralised sewage systems. You know, this is a big deal in New Zealand. We've not historically invested in it, and you know, we are still underprovided for when we compare ourselves to the OECD norms.
I suppose, though, you're going on the fact that, you know, all these little granny flats, all these 60-metre square buildings are all going to be plumbed. I mean, they could just be a sleep out. Slightly different legislation associated with a sleep out. If it's going to be a granny flat, you know, in the way just described, it is a granny flat, as opposed to a sleep out, which, as I say, falls under different bracket legislation. And you know, technically, it's possible to have a sleep out and a granny flat in the same location. So you know, it kind of gets convoluted and complicated. My biggest concern is that as we stuff more and more and more people in a super extended city that we have, you know, we have a footprint which is twice the size of Mumbai. We have a population of 1.6 million people. If we had the same population density as Mumbai, we'd have 38 million people. You know, it's an absolutely phenomenal figure. You know, we are a huge spread out city. We have long lines of communication. We have very long infrastructural lines and horizontal infrastructure generally, which makes it very expensive for us to cope with. The more people we stuff in the middle, on the one hand, it's good because you get better use of the infrastructure you've got. On the other hand, you're also now creating a massive infrastructural burden financially. You know, we're already in a position where we are struggling to keep on top of the costs associated with filling in potholes in the road. You know, and this is to do with the population that we have in New Zealand, which is a small population spread over a wide area. Therefore, our length of road is much bigger per person than anybody, well, pretty much anywhere else in the OECD. We've got a tiny population spread over a huge country. So, you know, we have these infrastructural concerns, which significantly impact these sorts of decisions of, let's take the brakes off development.